All right, 3, 2, 1. All right, how are we doing today?
Very good.
Wonderful. So starting off, can you please tell me your name, the year that you graduated, and the degree that you earned from the University of Michigan?
My name is Amy Yorke, and I graduated in 1993 with a master's degree in physical therapy.
That's pretty sweet.
Mm-hmm. It is.
And why did you choose University of Michigan for your physical therapy school?
At the time, University of Michigan Flint was the first program in the state to transition from a bachelor's degree to a master's degree. So I was actually the third cohort that had graduated with a master's degree. So when I was a senior in high school looking for an undergraduate institution, I felt that this institution really was progressive in what they were thinking. I also lived at home the entire time I went to school. So from a financial perspective, it also worked out pretty well.
That's a pretty good benefit. So before you started the program for your master's, you already were aware that it wasn't become a master's program, and where most other programs were bachelor's at the time?
They were still a bachelor's program at the time, and even back then, they had a program, they called it 2+3, so I could get my prerequisites done in 2 years.
Okay.
And then be in the program for 3 years and come out with a master's degree. So that also was very desirable to me as well.
That's a pretty good timeline.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good timeline. Overall, from your time in PT school, what would you say was your favorite memory? Do you have one that sticks out to you?
Yeah, and I wouldn't... It's the word favorite is an interesting word. I was thinking about this, and I would probably say my most salient moment or memorable moment was during first year fall. Had kinesiology, and we had a lab practical, like a midterm lab practical, and the faculty member, his name was Dr. Peter Lubert, who's also actually a graduate of the University of Michigan Physical Therapy program. And I was in with my partner, Liz, and I will never forget feeling so incompetent, so recognizing I don't know this. He's asking me these questions, and I was struggling answering them. And I think I had the shoulder, and he had Liz in a push-up position for probably way too long, and I could not answer it. And I was so close to on the verge of tears, but I didn't cry during it. But afterwards, I remember crying in the bathroom. And it was really at that moment that I realized that what had gotten me into PT school, which was memorizing, I was a master memorizer, was not going to allow me to be successful in the program.
Yeah.
And so I really changed how I studied, because previous to that, I studied by myself all the time. I lived at home, so I was a commuter. And I realized the value of studying with other people who came from different institutions, and really understanding that I couldn't just simply memorize things, that I actually had to learn them. I needed to understand them. I needed to learn to apply that. So I just remember that as such a pivotal moment in my education.
It's funny because you say all those study tips and that you use, and I've definitely heard those from our meetings together.
Yes. And
I heard them a few times. And it's good to know that you're human too when you were in PT school.
100%, yes.
That's awesome. You used the word salient at one point. Your salient memory. Now
Yes.
you're a neuro. You teach neuro here.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on how you got into that?
Yeah. When I originally decided I want to be a PT, and this is completely geeky and nerd-like, so just I recognize that. So when I was in 9th grade, I had to do a paper in my health class, and I had picked physical therapy. I knew really nothing about the profession. But I had thought, I didn't really want to be a nurse, and I thought about being a teacher, but that just felt like avenues that everybody does. And I played sports in high school, and I'm like, well, this physical therapy seems kind of cool. And so when I was in 9th grade, I kind of decided I want to be a physical therapist, and it was really my love of athletics that kind of made me look at the profession. After I graduated from high school, I started volunteering. I volunteered at local hospitals, nursing home, outpatient clinics. And kind of then I was really piqued by this idea of working in the hospital. I thought that was a really good setting. I got into the program and really connected with the neuro content that we had. And that kind of set me up then to really kind of pursue that. And then I also started working as a transporter at St. Mary's in Saginaw, where I saw lots of different patients with neurological conditions. And that ended up being my first full-time job as a physical therapist, and just kind of really solidified my love. I get a lot of pleasure, which sounds kind of bad, to help people who have sustained like something so acutely, like a stroke or a spinal cord injury. Like it just felt good to give people hope in a time where they just didn't have a lot of hope.
I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I think that you've actually inspired a lot of our class. I know that, myself included, to really be into neuro and want to do that, after we graduate. So I don't think that's a bad way of phrasing that at all.
Okay.
In your time, so were you like always into neuro when you first came here? Like you neuro the whole way through? Like you weren't like started in outpatient ortho and then you moved into neuro? Or you're like neuro start to finish?
Yeah, I did acute care, and I did everything I could do to always stay on the neural floors, like as much as I could do, like how I would like manipulate, like how we rotated. And I really only spent, out of the entire time that I've been a physical therapist, I really only spent 3 months doing like what you would call like traditional outpatient orthopedics. And I'm like totally fine with that. That's why I feel like don't ask me like to set up like pelvic traction or anything like that. But really, neuro is what kind of always like talked to me, or like what I felt like connected with. So whether I was doing neuro in acute care or doing outpatient neuro or neuro in home care, and now teaching and teaching in the neuro curriculum, like, yeah, it's just kind of part of who I am. That's
excellent. I'm assuming, was your favorite class neuro as well?
Yeah. What's funny is I struggled in neuroanatomy. At that time we had anatomy and then we had neuroanatomy, and I didn't like our neuroanatomy professor. There was a lot of struggles, like a lot of struggles. But our current dean, or the current dean of the College of Health Sciences, Dr. Donna Fry, was actually my neuro teacher.
Oh, wow.
And so we had like a course on neuro exam, and then we had a course on neuro intervention. And it just felt like everything clicked, like I got it. And what's kind of neat about that is I continued my relationship with Dr. Fry over time. Like as my grandparents aged and I had videotaped them doing balance tests, I like would share them with her so she could share it with the students. She actually had me come back and do a guest speaker on a treatment technique called NDT. I had gone for certification, so myself and an OT that I went with came and taught the students. It was in the late 90s. We came and did some guest lecturing and guest labs. So kind of always kept that relationship.
Okay. You're talking about Dr. Fry. Would you say that who was your favorite professor overall? Like, would you say it's her? Or like,
yeah, she's definitely one of them. Cindy Kincaid, who was Cindy was just a force to be reckoned with. She was in charge of our clinical education. Was always like so positive, so professional, so calm, like nothing would ever rattle her. Absolutely loved Cindy Kincaid. She also taught our modalities courses. So back in the early 90s, we actually had 2 courses in modalities. So we had like a thermal course, and then we had like an electro course. So the courses, a lot more credits then compared to now what you guys have when it comes to modalities. And she taught both of those courses. But yeah, absolutely adore Cindy Kincaid. And Dr. Darnell, also, he was not the director. He had stepped down from the director position when I was a student here, but there was something very calming also about him, and just a sense of such strong integrity and such a strong sense of history about physical therapy. And then even his role in getting physical therapy to come up here to the Flint campus, because it was decided that it was going to close.
Oh, wow.
And he's like, it's not going to close. We're just going to move it. And he did that. And I think about how courageous that was of him to do that. And so, yeah, I just really respected him and his experiences.
So he was the one that I don't think we actually heard that it was like, I thought it was just moving. I don't think we heard that it was like done.
Yeah, no, there was an issue regarding accreditation and who would accredit physical therapy programs, and the American Medical Association, this is the way I'm remembering it right, was upset.
Yeah.
And so they kind of basically picked on some programs and like, we're going to close you. And he's like, you're not closing us. We're just going to move. And that's what he did. So I just, like I said, that was a pretty brave thing that he did.
That's great. I don't think we heard that at all from anywhere else. So that's good information to have. So where's graduating from U of M's physical therapy program taking you in life? Tell us about your career.
Yeah, so when I graduated, I started working at St. Mary's in Saginaw, and I did acute care there. And I really thought, like, I was going to die there. Like, I mean, in all honesty, like, you work in a hospital, like, you think about stuff like that, and had no intentions of leaving there. And I mean, I worked there from the time I was 20 years old until the time I was 35. So, like, you think about those years of your life, like that 15 years of your life, like, I got married, I graduated, I got married, I had my children while I worked there. Went from working full-time, had a management position, at some point in time decided, you know what, management's not for me. Stepped down from management and had like a clinical specialist job because I became board certified in neurologic physical therapy in the late 90s. And started having children, so I worked part-time, I worked weekends. I did weekends like Saturday, Sunday, Monday for like almost 2 years. Until I got tired of seeing total joint replacements and like, I got to use my neuro brain. Like, this is like boring. So I started doing outpatient neuro and then eventually switched to Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So working part-time, I got 2 children, things are good. And then Gentiva Health Services came into town and they were looking for somebody to be in charge of a specialty balance program. And I'm like, oh, this sounds right up my alley. And it was management and clinical work and teaching. And I thought, let me look at this. So jumped into that world in 2005 and worked for them for 3 years, and was a really great opportunity. Got to teach at a professional level, got to treat patients, and home care was just a completely different environment. And I really liked the home care environment. And then in 2008, I started working here full time. Decided to make the switch from clinician really to academia. When I made that decision, though, I had to go back to school because I had a master's degree in physical therapy. My board certification in neurophysical therapy got me the job here. If I wouldn't have had that, I would not have been eligible for it. So when I kind of signed on the dotted line saying I would teach, I had to go back, make a decision to go back for a terminal doctorate degree. So that meant like a PhD degree.
Okay.
So started looking at PhD programs. And in 2010, I enrolled at Western Michigan University's Interdisciplinary Health Sciences program and
nice.
Graduated with my PhD then in 2013. So teaching at a university, but then also being a student in a university provides some really cool opportunities and challenges. But I did it. So
I'm sure that influences your teaching style in some aspects, being a student one way and a professor in the other.
It absolutely does. And I think understanding that people have lives outside of PT school. Like when I was in PT school, I was like in my I was 20, 20, 21, 22. I was young, had no children, wasn't married. I lived at home, like really had limited responsibilities. And then returning back to school as an older student, I'm married, I have 2 children, I have a full-time job. Like school gets placed into a different category than when I was a PT student. When I was a PT student, that was like my life, like everything. And when I was a PhD student, while it was very important, I knew that if I wasn't successful, that I would be okay. Because even if I couldn't stay teaching here, I can find a job. Like I'll be okay. And so it was definitely different, like returning back to school.
Yeah, that's great. You had a pretty unique course of your life in terms of how you just did it all. And are you close with any of your classmates, like your former classmates still?
Yeah, and so I think this idea of closeness too kind of changes as you get older. Like definitely social media has allowed us to kind of stay in contact. And while I don't see the core group of people on a regular basis, a couple years ago, I have a classmate that is in California and she came home. So a group of us got together and it was literally like we had not skipped a beat. Like we were at a restaurant and we talked and we talked and we talked and we talked and we caught up and we were there for hours. And so it's the thing that I really appreciate about like the relationships that you build, that like they continue. Or on LinkedIn, like one of my classmates like consistently like contacts me like it's my anniversary of work. He's like, well, how are you doing? And so it's just a really kind of cool thing to know that these people, we're still close even though we don't necessarily talk to each other, see each other all the time.
Yeah. That's great. I'm glad you were able to form so many awesome relationships. So how has the school changed in terms of administration and how the program's organized?
Yeah, the program has grown so much in the short time that I've been here. So I started in 2008. We originally only were accepting like 40 or 42 students. And in 2010 was the first time that we increased the numbers. Also, when I was here, they had started the post-professional program, so the transitional DPT, and then also started the PhD in physical therapy program. So it has grown significantly since I originally started. And so that's kind of a really neat thing to be a part of and to engage in.
That's great. And then what do you think has been your greatest contribution to the program overall in your time here?
Yeah. I don't think I've made it yet.
That's a good answer.
Right? Like, or at least I hope that I haven't made it yet. Because if I've made it already, then I think it's time for me to go. So that's why I'm like very hesitant to think about that. I think in my job, I have been really given the responsibility to help students, no matter where they are along their path, get to be the best that they can be, like in this moment, in this time, knowing that they continue to have a lifetime where they can continue to learn and grow. And so I take that responsibility pretty seriously, and I enjoy that responsibility. So yeah, I really hope that like the best is yet to come, that I still have more time to accomplish what I'm supposed to accomplish. So yeah.
That's a fantastic answer. That really is. And this one's off script. This question's off script. So what's your favorite memory of teaching, and why is it bucket transferring me in lab? Why is it? What about that? What about that was your favorite part of your 20 some years of teaching?
Oh my gosh. My favorite. There are so many like good teaching ones. That's a really tough one, Siggy. So doing bucket transfers consistently, semester after semester after semester, year after year after year, I would say is like one of my like favorite things like to do, because I do think that students look at me and they make assumptions about me, just like I make assumptions about them, right? Well, you were just gonna say that. And so when they view that happening, like that moment of time when I like miraculously like lift like a human being that is significantly larger than me and do it very safely and very controlled, people are like, holy cow.
I mean, that's the reaction I had when I was in the air, like when I was being carried.
When you were being suspended.
I was quite, I didn't know what was going on, and it was quite nerve-wracking, but I wanted to just bring that up for a fun question. I thought that was a fun one.
I think the other thing that students always give me is you guys help keep me young. So because part of like I'm aging, but all of you guys are staying the same.
Yes. Just
the gap is increasing now. So like I appreciate the students for getting me on social media. Like I didn't have a Facebook account. I appreciate the students helping me to lose my BlackBerry or my iPhone, like when those things. I had a BlackBerry when I first started. I appreciate talking to students about like pop culture kinds of things, like what show are you watching? I used to always teach on Friday afternoons, and Project Runway was on Thursday. So that would be a topic of conversation with the one lab, like what happened on Project Runway that night, because that was even before like Netflix and things like that. Netflix was still where you sent in things and received things back.
The Stone Age.
Yeah, right. So like all of that. So the first cohort that I really feel like I saw for the majority of time, they had graduated in 2010, and they did a really good job at breaking me in for a good word. Like there was a classmate out in the hallway, and the one student raised his hand. He's like, can you let so-and-so in? I'm like, how'd you know he was out there? He's like, he texted me. And I was like, literally, like you were right here in front of me. Like, how did I not realize that you're texting somebody? Like those things, I'm just like, oh my goodness gracious. Oh my goodness gracious. But yeah, you guys have continued to like feed me and feed my soul and give me hope for our future.
Well, I'm glad there's going to be a lot more generations to come after us. So
I hope so.
Your soul's going to never stop eating.
Okay,
so that's really all the questions that I have for you right now. Thank you so much for your time, and have a great rest of your day.
Yes.